Hello, Identify gamers. It is late in the night when I'm recording this, but there were some new adjustments to characters that dropped. I thought we'd quickly go over them since I think they're pretty interesting. One other thing is they actually gave us some more compensation when it came to like the bugs and whatnot for the new engine. So we got 10 memory spheres, or rather I meant ranked treasures. So let's quickly just pull them real quick, see if we can get anything cool. This is my regular ranked treasure. Woo Chang moment. All right, let's see. How close am I to, what the? Oh, I guess I have opened 0 of this, haven't I? All right, 32 and I get a guaranteed gold? No gold, that's fine. Can I get anything cool? Not really, not really. I guess I get a couple of these things, which I can always trade for fragments in the future. Anyways, now that we have that, let's take a look at these new adjustments. So here we go. We're gonna look at mechanic here first. These come from Mori_identity on Twitter.com, but also keep in mind that these are test server changes, so not all of these will be implemented into the game. Usually when something is put onto the test server, it usually does get implemented, but it's not guaranteed, right? So we knew about Mech getting a buff, kind of, and this is kind of a buff right here. So her decoding speed debuff is taken from -35 to -25. So whenever there are 2 people that have injuries on the team, Mechanic gets a -70% debuff, and if that stacks with Panic, that's -76, and that's a lot. So now it's only going to stack to 50 because it applies twice, right? So 25 plus 25 is 50. So it should be decoding at half the rate as opposed to 30% of the rate. So they're buffing her lower limit, but they're also going to be nerfing the bot, it looks like here. The bot has a 10% decoding debuff, and it's going to be going even lower for a 16% decoding debuff. So basically they're raising her lower limit. That's what they said that they were going to do. They weren't going to like really buff her, but they were going to make her a little more balanced, where the bot is going to decode slower, but Tracy herself is going to decode faster even when the debuffs hit. And then we have basic power consumption for the robot is decreased from 0.56 seconds to 0.5 seconds. So the robot durability is a little bit higher, and that is also the case for when you're on the chair as well. Previously, it is 0.83. It's going to go drop down to 0.75. So they're keeping things a little bit easier. So yeah, the robot has more durability, which is good for Tracy, but it decodes slower. So I'd say overall, this is like a solid buff. They just decreased the bot's decoding by 6% to help it balance it out just a little bit. Honestly, I would overall say this is a buff for Tracy. And while I don't know if this is outright gonna put her back into the meta, I do think it's gonna make her a little more viable when it comes to her debuff, at least, because then she's actually gonna be able to contribute to the team a little better than what she used to be able to, because -70% on decoding was crazy. So now she basically gets a 20% buff when 2 people are injured, which is kind of nice, or at least like what it used to be. So that's not bad for Mechanic. So next up, we have a Prospector Nerf. He is getting a 10% increase in cooldown time to his magnets. So his magnets record once per minute. Now it is going to be once every 70 seconds, which, yeah, let me just say, Norton's magnets recharge really, really fast. A minute is pretty darn fast. And honestly, I don't really know how I feel about this, because Prospector tends to be one of the most popular characters played throughout all of Identity 5. At least in ranks. He's a very, very common character and very frustrating to go up against. But I don't know if I agree with this nerf. I don't know if I do, because Prospector, while good against Anne and Ivy, Opera Senior kind of does cook him. So I feel like in the meta, it's not like really that bad. But I think like another thing that Prospector can do is a lot of the time, like against Ivy, he kind of throws out a magnet early and just kind of waits for his stuff to recharge. I think this is just going to make him a little less magnet spammy, because he has 3 magnets that he can stack. And by the time you use up 3 of them, you can usually get 1 back in the time it takes for it to like cool down. So it's just gonna make it a little less. Like I remember there was that 4 escape against the Wax Stars that I watched like a few days ago. That would not be possible with this nerf. That would not be possible, because his magnet would not have recharged as fast. So pretty interesting that they're gonna be trying to nerf Prospector in that regards. I don't know if I completely agree with this one though. I know a lot of Norton fans are not gonna be happy with this, and I don't know if this is necessary, but I can see why they're doing it, because I do feel like Prospector is decently strong in the meta, as long as Opera Singer is out of the question for him. Next up, there is a small nerf to Weeping Clown. So his speed is still extremely, extremely good, but they're going to be nerfing his decoding speed, as you can see here, by 5%. So he already has a debuff of 10%. They're going to be nerfing it to 15. And in the past, I did not agree with this decoding debuff, but now that Weeping Clown is actually a really solid kiter, and he's actually becoming a lot more meta, I do completely agree with this change. Because if they're going to make Weeping Clown as strong as he is, he needs to have some sort of drawback, and making him decode slower in a meta that pushes Cypher Rush really, really hard, honestly, kind of checks out. Now, next up, there is a Puppeteer adjustment, and I don't know if this is going to be mistranslated, so this could not be a buff, but what I'm looking at right now, this looks like a hard buff for Puppeteer. First off, Lewis can negate fear status equivalent to 1.5 times the normal amount of damage. So, that's a buff. That means, so what happens when you take a chip hit as Lewis? You can eat 2 chips. Let's say you're fighting a Bonbon, and you pop your Lewis, and then you take the 25% chip. If he hits you with 2 bombs, then Lewis will die. If he hits you with a bomb and then a normal attack, you'll take 25% more, so you'll be put at half health. But with this new buff, it looks like you'll be able to throw 1 bomb, and then hit you, and then he'll still take 25%. So it seems like they're trying to buff Puppeteer versus chip hunters. Well, now, if you want to get him down, he's going to be able to eat 3 chip hits or 1 chip hit and a basic, all with one thing. So he's able to negate more damage in that regards. And I believe this will account toward Joseph damage as well, since Joseph does that 0.75. I think he will completely negate the Joseph damage as well, which is kind of crazy to think about. So now he's not going to have a huge weakness to Joseph. And when it comes to Hermit, this is really interesting as well. They're going to buff him specifically for Hermit. So whenever Lewis takes damage from the Hermit, he takes the damage first, and the rest is distributed to the other survivors. So Hermit's damage is 0.6. And then if you hit the Puppeteer while he's in Lewis, it seems like Lewis is going to absorb all the damage from the Hermit, and then it's spread throughout the teammates, I guess. So, like, I guess Lewis will, like half the damage or something. I really don't know what it means by this. I don't know if Lewis is going to absorb all the damage from that hit that's, like, spread out, or it's hard to say. I honestly don't know what this one means. It's a little hard to tell. I don't know if he's going to absorb all the damage that would be spread out throughout the other survivors and eat the damage for them, or if it's just going to reduce the damage given to the other survivors. It's kind of hard to say, but I guess there's going to be a chance that Lewis will be able to absorb the damage from the other teammates as well, which would kind of make him really good. So this is just, again, a very hard buff to Puppeteer, if that is the case. Again, these aren't perfect translations. We're literally just using Google Translate from Twitter, so these might not be 100% accurate. But there is also one more buff that he has here, and that is each time you successfully heal another survivor, the fear stats of that survivor and yourself are reduced by 1/4. So this is still the same. This is the same. This is how it always was, but this is the adjustment. And the time needed to heal the healed survivor again is increased by 10%, originally 20%. So yeah, it looks like whenever you heal somebody, they usually get that effect where it's like, oh, they heal slowly now. But it's going to be lower. So it used to be 20%. They're going to make him be able to heal 10% faster now when he's re-healing, it looks like. So not for the first initial heal, but for the second heal, it's going to take 10% less time. What I think is fine, because Puppeteer already heals incredibly slowly. So I don't think this is really that bad. Plus, Puppeteer has mainly just been used as a kiting type character. So he doesn't really heal that often. And I feel like for a character that's probably more consistent as a kiter than a rescuer, like they're buffing his kiting here. Like they're making him a lot more containment heavy than rescue heavy, even though he was like advertised more as a rescuer. This buff here seems very like kite heavy, especially to like chip hunters. So basically, Puppeteer is no longer going to be countered by chip hunters, sort of. Because the thing is, it's still going to be like a mind game thing, right? Because in the past, hunters could previously just like throw a chip and then hit him, and then you'd be fine. But now, like, you're just going to have to waste out the Lewis. So the Lewis is basically going to guarantee you free time. I think TSs are probably going to be more safe as well. It's hard to say. It's hard to say at the moment. We're probably going to see like some better examples out in the future. But at least for now, Puppeteer is getting a pretty decent buff here. Next up, we have a nerf and a buff. Geisha is going to be getting nerfed, actually. It's a very small nerf. Her dash cooldown is going to be taken from 8 seconds to 9 seconds, and that's it. That's literally all that is. Honestly, as a person who struggles against Geisha, I'm fine with this, but I know that Geisha is not really that strong in the current meta, so I don't really know how I feel about this. But Geisha has been picked like a little bit more like in the later rounds in IDV, and her buff definitely did help her a lot. Like the logic of her dash was improved by so much that it actually like is a pretty solid buff when it should have. And I think it was originally just supposed to be like an adjustment to her dashes. So yeah. Whether I can say this will be like really impactful for Geisha, I don't really know, because the cooldown is already pretty short in and of itself. And half the time this cooldown is in cooldown, it's usually spent in attack recovery if you get the hit. Like you dash on somebody, hit them, you're in attack recovery, and then you have like 4 seconds so you can dash again. So it's not really that bad, but it's gonna just like make it a little bit harder for her to, I guess, really incredibly rush down really hard. So I think that might be okay for her. Hard to say. But next up we have a Faro Lady buff, which I'm actually behind this because I think Faro Lady is a very weak character. I honestly think she's bottom 5. But right here it says, the cooldown of Lady Faro's Faro Lady invisibility changes depending on the cumulative duration of the previous invisibility. So I can only imagine this is in regards to if you interrupt the invisibility. So you know how like Faro Lady has that like 40% benchmark where if you do an action like drop a pallet, vault, fly a wheel, whatever, it gets rid of that invisibility, right? I imagine they're going to make the cooldown of that a little bit less depending on if you interrupt the own invisibility. The longer the previous invisibility time, the longer the cooldown of the end of the invisibility. Minimum of 3 seconds, maximum of 40. Okay, I don't really know what they mean by minimum of 3. That seems kind of insane. But next up, this is in regards to her item, something that I actually thought was really weak. Hunters will no longer be able to hear the Faro Lady's actions while she is cloaked, and no longer see the effects of her aroma staff. So whenever Faro Lady would use the staff, the little item, it would basically just be telling the hunter, okay, I'm about to make you pick a 50-50, right? Now you're not going to be able to see that effect, so the effect is going to kind of happen out of nowhere for them. Says cloaking cooldown countdown will pause while close call bolo tie is active. Okay, I actually don't really know what that means, honestly. I can only imagine maybe while you're using the item for like a second, it'll pause your invisibility, I guess, like your invisibility cooldown, maybe, so like it could last like a second longer. Hard to say, again, translation is kind of goofy. But basically, this is just going to make it a little less obvious when you're using an item. Because in the past, like when you could see the effect, you're just like, okay, I'll just pick a 50-50 and the Faro Lady will die 50% of the time. Like Faro Lady can cook, it's just the fact that she's inconsistent. And I think with this buff, she's going to be a little, they're trying to just make her more consistent, right? Like that she still has like the heavy mind game situation of like, oh, you can't really spot me out during my trail. But now that the wand effect is hidden, you can't really hear her anymore. It's going to really help her with that invisibility. And honestly, I think that might actually be pretty decent for her. I still don't think this is going to make her a good character by any means, but it might bump her up like a few tiers or whatever. It's going to be hard to say. I think if she's going to be in a strong area, Farley's going to be a really annoying chase, especially like in a 2-story area. 2-story areas are going to be very strong for Farley because you're basically just going to have to sit upstairs and just kind of pray that she doesn't fall. Because if she uses an item and she falls, like it's just going to be very mind game heavy. So I think like Farley in 2-story might actually be kind of OP, but I think anywhere else it could be a little bit of a struggle for her. Regardless, I think this is going to be a good buff for Faro because she is pretty weak, so I completely agree with the buff for Faro. All right, next up, we have some adjustments to Axe Boy and Nightmare here. So they call him Crybaby. I think that's his name in Japanese or Chinese or something. At least I heard something like that before. But yeah, they mentioned this in a Q&A, how they're going to adjust the logic from the souls. So the relative positions of 2 souls when patrolling the survivors are optimized to prevent selection errors. So yeah, in the past, like whenever souls would overlap each other, when there was like be a ton of souls, whether you're trying to like camp with them or trying to down with them if you have like a lot of trees set up in an area, it's usually like pretty hard to select which one you want specifically. So that's going to help basically select which one you want better to be able to, you know, get more precise soul aiming. Then he also has a little bit of a buff here. The judgment width of the path of rest is increased by 50%. So that's the restful road, I'm pretty sure. So whenever Axeboy rides on the restful road, it's pretty thin and narrow. You really have to be like on top of that thing, but they're gonna widen it a little bit. So you can like kind of move left and right a little bit more. Which is going to be kind of nice. You know, it's going to be able to, you know, curve off the edge of the restful road. Because a lot of time you use it and it's just a straight line speed boost, right? So you kind of usually have to curve off at the end. So it's going to give you like a little bit of extra speed whenever you're moving left and right. You don't have to be exactly like completely right on top of the restful road, which is going to be pretty nice for Axeboy. And then the number of restful pines at the start of the game is increased from 5 to 6. So that's something that we need as well. Just get like a bonus tree. No one's going to complain about a bonus tree. Honestly, I think that's fine. I think that's fine. That's a nice solid buff for Axe Boy. Next up we have is some adjustments for Nightmare. I think that overall this is going to be a buff, but it's going to be a little awkward how this translation works. So initially, we got movement speed when not in pursuit state is increased from 10% to 13%. So this is his poached ability. It's basically like the Hunter's Instinct on the Persona Web, but he has it built into his own kit. So whenever Nightmare is not in pursuit, he's going to be able to move 13% faster, which isn't bad. You know, that's a pretty solid speed boost because he's just so freaking darn slow. And then it is quickly reduced to 0 when entering a pursuit state. It's kind of like Hunter's Instinct. The second you see a survivor, you're just going to immediately be not in that anymore. But what's cool about this is this happens even after you get first presence ability. Hunter's Instinct only lasts until you get your first presence. But for Nightmare, this is the entire game. So you get that 13% buff whenever you're not in pursuit, which is really good for him. Next up is right here. They're going to be nerfing the Nightmare pallet camping strategy. So a lot of the time, what happens when you're up against a Nightmare is, let's say you're going to be decoding a cipher, right? A good example is like the corner cipher on Leo's memory with triple pallet. You're decoding that cipher, and then boom, he throws a bird on you, and you're like, uh-oh, I have a bird. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna walk 2 steps, and I'm gonna sit inside this pallet. And Nightmare, I believe, always spawns behind you, so you want to like position yourself in a way where the Nightmare will teleport onto you, spawn behind you, and then you can get a free pallet stun. That's what's so bad about Nightmare is like half the time when you want to teleport onto somebody, they're usually gonna be waiting in a pallet, and if you teleport onto them, it's a free pallet stun for them. And that can be really annoying, especially if it's something like a cowboy or a forward that stuns you for longer, or if they have that increased pallet stunning time. It can be really annoying for stuff like that because, you know, you get stuff like, you have characters like Ivy who can just teleport wherever all the time, no cooldown basically, and there's no pallet spam counterplay to that. You can drop a pallet in between. But for Nightmare, there was nothing. He usually just gets cooked every time he teleports, and it was really, really cheap, honestly. It was like a good strategy, but like, on maps like Arms Factory, Hospital, or just any map where there's a ton of pallets, he just kind of got cooked, and that felt bad for Nightmare. For being such a bad hunter already, it's like, why does he even have this? But it looks like they're going to try to be removing this, and this is the explanation that they have. If a board is hit while flying, I'm guessing if he gets pallet stunned while he teleports onto you, you will gain the Revelation effect. And if you are hit again during the next flight, I don't really know what that means, you will destroy the board directly, ignoring knockback and stun. So I'm guessing the first time somebody tries to pallet stun Nightmare after he teleports, it's going to work for the first time. But I guess any time after that, or at least like the next time, he will instantly break the pallet when you drop it on him, and it will ignore the knockback and stun, meaning that like it will not work a second time. So basically, at least at the moment, you can only do that once, and then board destruction speed is slightly increased as well. So it seems like whenever you hit him, he's gonna get a pallet breaking buff. So that's gonna be pretty nice. But I think that's only if you hit him. Again, this is like a weird, awkward translation. And there is going to be a bit of a drawback for this. The cooldown of Bad Omen is increased to 57 seconds. So currently, whenever Nightmare tries to teleport, his teleport is 50 seconds with his bird. They're going to be increasing it to 57 seconds, which I guess is like weird because they're nerfing him, but they're trying to like balance it, right? They're buffing him and they're nerfing him. So the cooldown of the teleport is higher, but he gets that passive speed bonus when not in pursuit, and he's going to be able to deal with the pallet camping strategy a little bit more. Which is going to be pretty good for him, honestly. The only issue that I'm seeing here is he doesn't get it immediately, so it looks like the first time when somebody tries to do that in a game, it's only going to work once. And I think that's a bit of an issue because usually when you're playing Nightmare, that probably only will happen once per game. You don't really get pallet slammed that many times in a game. I mean, I don't play Nightmare at high level, so I don't really know. But whenever I play Nightmare in like 5v5, it usually happens maybe once or twice a game. It's pretty rare. Because a lot of time people are just trying to run to straight distance, and it's a very niche situation too. Because a lot of time, what people are going to start doing now, instead of having the Nightmare spawn into a pallet, they're just going to have you spawn right next to the pallet and then drop the pallet, and then like it'll just be like an Ivy where they have to break the pallet. So I think going forward, that's what you're going to have to do against Nightmares. You're not going to be able to pallet camp him anymore. You're just gonna have to like drop the pallet right after, which I think is good. This is gonna make it so he doesn't have to get like pallet camped anymore. So I kind of like this because Nightmare sucks and he needs anything that he can get, bro. And yeah, at the moment that looks to be all the adjustments coming to the game. So let me know what you guys think. Honestly, I'm kind of curious to hear what everybody else thinks about these buffs and nerfs. I think overall this is a nice patch. Like it's overall some pretty solid changes. The Prospector and the Geisha ones are interesting, but I think they'll be okay. Honestly, I think those two characters are gonna be fine. I think they're strong in their own ways, despite getting some cooldown adjustments. So yeah, those are like the only two ones I'm a little bit concerned about. Puppeteer might also become quite a bit stronger with this. It's really hard to say, but yeah, just let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you later. I hope you have a great rest of your day, everybody. Bye bye.